Oh, we already got a comment. Good morning and welcome to the show. As you can see, I'm Howler Mouse. This is the esteemed Gore Vidal.
Morning,
And
everybody.
how are you? And we're doing a topic today that is all Gore. This is all Mr. Vidal over here. How are you doing this morning, sir? We chatted a little bit here.
I'm
So
doing
how are you
good,
doing this
Tim. It's
morning?
good to see you. It always is. And talking comics with you is always not just a pleasure, but it's always very enlightening when I discuss books with you. It really
Fantastic.
is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I enjoy. I really enjoy this. The talk we had, stuff like that, where we do the deep dives. Is just always enjoy it, man. Always enjoy it. So, well, what is this? We have Jared Osborne here. I was expecting John to be here first.
Hey, good morning,
Uh,
Jared. Good
yeah.
morning, Jared.
What is this being late nonsense? It's not nonsense. We don't get paid for this. Yeah,
Facts. Absolute facts. Absolute facts.
yeah, yeah. And I was telling Gore before the show here. I was out quite late last night. I ended up seeing a Beatles versus Rolling
It was.
Stones show that actually ended up going. I think it was 2.5 hours, and it was actually fantastic. It was like two tribute bands. They went through the different eras of the Beatles and the Stones. But the problem, what the thing that got me is they had. I don't know if you know about the Stones, but Brian Jones was the first member of the 27 Club. They had one guy who every time they would do different eras, he played three different guitarists. He went from Brian Jones to Mick Taylor to Ron Wood, and seeing it was so weird seeing somebody doing Mick Jones up there was surreal. Beside of a guy who looked like a miniature Mick Jagger, to where I looked at my buddy and I said, "He's got to be illegitimate. That's too close." And he actually sounded like him, And I was like, "I wonder if he's done the DNA. I don't know." I'm like, yeah.
Did they play Sympathy for the Devil? I think that's my favorite Rolling Stone song.
They play, yes, and they did it well, and I think I made a video of it.
Oh, it's good.
And
Okay.
we caught a few songs they probably wouldn't do because this is supposed to be entertainment and light. And nah, man, they went a little bit dark there. It
Okay.
was really fantastic, and the attention to detail with the bands was fantastic. When we get to the Get Back era of the Beatles,
Yeah.
the guy who was Paul McCartney, he had the same suit and he had the same freaking sandals on. Little details that on top of the, unless you watch them play on top of the building, there's little things there you don't know, you may not be aware of. But I saw that and I was like, oh my God, they went all out on this. This was
Good.
wild. So
Did they do Eleanor Rigby for the Beatles?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
But no, they did not do Eleanor Rigby
okay.
for the Beatles. Well, they started out with the Mott Tops, the Bods and stuff. Worked their way up. Of course, they did Get Back. Oh, Day Tripper, and oh my gosh, the Magical Mystery Tour, Sergeant Pepper era. They kind of smashed two, three
Okay.
records there together, so it was really well. But the Rolling Stones kind of blew them away, and at the end of it, it turned into a Stones show because they've been around so long. And then all the bands came together and they started doing like melodies back and forth. It was so wild seeing the Stones of like 1980 being beside of the Beatles of 1968. I was like, this is surreal. There was moments where you were sort of like, they just did very well. They did very well. So we got
The
Victor.
Stones. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, Victor Shade
Morning.
is here. Yeah.
Morning. Yeah, the
Well,
Stones are an amazing band. I saw them in Dallas in the '80s, and even then we were impressed. Like they weren't old, but even
right.
then they gave one hell of a show.
Yeah.
And the fact they're still around, it's
Mhm.
just amazing.
Yeah.
And that now what is it? Isn't Mick Jagger Sir Mick Jagger? Did he get knighted or something like that a long time ago?
Oh, I don't know. The only news I ever see is that he has like a 37-year-old girlfriend and they may be engaged. And he's like 81, 82 now.
Well, good
So
for him,
yeah.
and I guess good for her. So,
And I listened to their last album, and I'm like, they still got it. It's one of their better
oh really?
ones.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow.
So, Keith Richards of all people had the best song on it. So, okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
love Michael Jones.
I tell you what, we have stalled long enough to have people jump in here and get their
Yeah, good morning,
coffee, and,
everybody.
and I've
Thank you
got
for
a
joining us.
room. I've got a room that's smelling like coffee and comic books. So
Yeah, same
I'm getting
here.
juiced up for this. Absolutely. So, Gore, explain our topic if you want, and hey, let's do this. You can pull out the first book if you'd like.
Yeah, basically is get to the heart of the matter in comics and stories, in the sense that for those of us, I mean, all of us know people here who uh, look at the comics and they use the pejorative term of they're the funnies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know a few people and who are book readers. They will never read a comic book or a comic strip, and they refer to them that way. But for us who read comics, well, we know that they're wrong, first of all, and they're just willfully ignorant of the medium, and they see it very differently than we do. And so, and yet when you get to the heart of the matter, is just stories that are just very moving, very compelling. And it's always, when you read any story or watch a movie or a poem or a song, for the first time, and you're quite affected by it, and you see, wow, the execution of it. And with comics, of course, it's a combination of the writer, the artist, the inker, the colorist, everything, and how they basically, execute their story. And I'm glad Jared's here, because I think it was last month was April, I think was the 100th anniversary of The Great Gatsby, right?
Yeah.
It's a novel I think everyone here is familiar with. And it's one of my favorite books, right? And certainly has a very, difficult ending, but it's an appropriate ending. And the way the story is told. And it's a powerful book. I've reread it many times, including this year. After the last reread I had was a few years ago. And you see this book, when I first read it, it just strikes you. And I didn't read it when I was young. I read it when I was already in my 20s, I think, for the first time. I never came across it when I was in high school. I mean, I knew about it, but I never read it back then. And but in any event, the way this came about, I was at a comic shop. I want to say a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and I came across this little guy right here, which is a DC Christmas special. It's number 2, and it's from, I think, 1989.
I'll put you on solo, sir.
Yeah, it's 1989. It was in the dollar bin. And the cover was okay, but I was thinking, well, I wonder who's in here. And then I began to thumb through it. And when I began to look through it, and I saw the stories here, I think it's 5 stories that are in here. And I saw who the creators were. I said, well, I'm just going to pick this book up. And I'm going to discuss 3 stories in our discussion as we go along this morning. And the first one I'll discuss is the one that when I opened the book, it opened to this page right here. I'm not joking. It opened to this page here. And as soon as I saw that, I'm thinking, hey, is that Joe Kubert? Well, it is Joe Kubert, but it's also with John Byrne.
I've actually seen this story. I was wrong. Yes.
No, you're pretty well versed in these comics, Tim. So you're probably going to know many of these, if not all of them. Yeah. And again, all these are Christmas stories, and this one is an Enemy Ace story, a Hans von Hammer story. And it's written by John Byrne, penciled by him. It's the finished art is by Andy Kubert. Andy Kubert. That's a Joe Kubert by mistake. The editor is Mark Waid. The story is dedicated to Joe Kubert and the great Bob Kanigher. Actually, they're both great, Joe and Bob Kanigher.
Absolutely,
great stories. And so the story is like it's under 10 pages. So I opened it and I just got it, and then I saw the other creators and I said, this is a no-brainer. And basically what the story is you have a Red Cross, and you have a young man there who's trying a plane of the Lords of the Air, of the German planes. And then you have another soldier there who's older, probably an officer, chastising them, for doing this. Now, the story, it's called Silent Night, and it's a silent story. And if you look at the nurse there, they hear someone's arriving, and it's Von Hammer. Now, Enemy Ace is, I think, a fascinating character to me. He's an aristocrat. He does his duty for his country. He's an excellent pilot. So he arrives here, and he brings food to have a dinner. And then he goes over to this. There's this board there that has missing in action. I think most of them are probably British or English boys, and he salutes them. And chances are he probably shot them down, right?
Right.
And then that young man who was chastised pulls out a gun on him, right?
Gotcha.
And he sees the girl, and they have this dance. But then who stops the boy from shooting him but that same officer? I mean, I'm calling him an officer, this older gentleman there. And he points up into the air, indicating, the fighting is up in the air between, he's a pilot, you're a pilot. We're not going to do that here. And the way it concludes is that Von Hammer tries to shake the man's hand. The man just points towards the exit. And Von Hammer's a gentleman. He's always been, and also his manners are very, very polished.
Mm-hmm.
He gets back on his plane and just flies away. But I found this, quite moving, and in the sense that, I know a little bit about Enemy Ace over the years. Reading the comics, I try to find them whenever I can. I like the character, the way he's been written, and at least by Robert Kanigher. Those are the only ones that I've read, those storylines. And, on the one by Pratt. When
right.
Pratt in the 80s did a beautiful book, which I thought I was going to use today, but I decided not to, about the last days of Von Hammer, when he's an old man and in the last days of his life, when he's remembering, his life. But it was a really arresting story, and the way what Byrne and Kubert did here, one, it's a silent issue. The images tell you everything you need to know. And the way they draw, Von Hammer as, again, a man who not just takes his duty very seriously, but he is, again, just a man who is a decent human being.
Right.
And in the comics that I've read by him, that's always been something about him. He's never had the bloodlust. And it's just, when he's in the air, he knows what he has to do. And also for his own men, he has to train them to kill. Otherwise, they're going to be killed. And so, again, I had that knowledge about the character when I read this, but even if you don't know anything about him, you can just pick up this issue and be like, what is going on? Who is this man? You get that mystery about him, and you want to, I'm thinking maybe readers would say, would never read this, anything about him would maybe be compelled. I know I would have been if I had picked up back in 89 and said, who is this? I don't know anything about Enemy Ace. Or maybe I'd seen those comics and said, oh, well, this looks interesting. And I would have pursued it.
A couple of things that make a war story like that work, whether there's a war going on or not, there, you think that but the fact is there's a couple things that make it very visceral, right? A lot of those war comics are written by people who were actually in war. A lot of our comic book guys from back in the day signed up and were drafted, just like a lot of people at the Walt Disney Studios and stuff. When World War II hit, they were out. They got handed a gun, go get Hitler. Some of them tried. Jack Kirby said they gave him a chocolate bar and a gun and M16 and told him to go to kill Hitler. And he said, and I tried, So throughout all that, with what comes out there, there's an authenticity with a lot of these war comics that people don't see. And also it's from a time and an era in a world where we're so far removed from so many people having the military existence and stuff like that. I don't think it really grabs them. Older readers read those things, and and then you've got like maybe a second generation of people like Garth Ennis he doesn't like superheroes, but he studies history of wars and things, right? And you get an authenticity with that. what I think works with that story, and I probably sat around my buddy Robbie Bird's house or something, probably read it or something. When you showed that kid with the eye patch, it all came back. But I think it's like the contradiction of being in a hostile environment like that on the most holy of nights, and having people having a sense of compassion that you would normally never see. And you pointed
Sure.
that out, I think. And also, there are true stories from World War II that people have heard over the years. I remember an episode of Unsolved Mysteries where somebody was trying to find who one of the soldiers were or something. But basically, it was almost like that story. It was a couple of soldiers were out in the winter and they found a cabin, and the German lady let them in, and some German soldiers came in. And because of the night being so close, being at Christmas, they actually just looked at each other and they all sat down and had a dinner with that lady, the Germans and the soldiers. And for one night, the war was gone. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. This stuff actually happened. And that's what makes it, attaching Christmas to it just makes the mystique of Christmas so, so great. So I could absolutely understand why that story grabbed you.
There's also that famous World War I episode, right? On Christmas Eve, when the soldiers,
maybe it was World War I,
World War I, the trenches, they on either side, the German side, and then on the British side, the men just walk out of the trenches and they go into no man's land, and they share tea and they help the wounded and they care for each other, and for a few hours they're just being human. I mean, being humane. I'm sorry, towards each other. And then, but when dawn comes and Christmas is over and they go back to the killing, and but yes, anyway, and so it was just a wonderful surprise. But there was just one, but that was not the most affecting story for me in this book. That was the first one. Again, I opened it to that page, and I saw Cubert, and I thought it was the elder Cubert, not the son. And it was burned, and I said, well, I have to get this. But then I looked through it, and I said, oh, my goodness, all these people are working on this book. And so, yeah, and then I read it, I think that evening. And I'll share the other two stories, as we go along here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to bounce off what you said with The Great Gatsby. I'm surrounded here, and I've got some tear jerkers here, I did this on the fly. I did the stories that just popped in here. Oh, it's really Tim's all over this. Okay. Tim says he has that Christmas issue and several others. It's good stuff. Yeah, Comic Crack, good morning, is with us. Great to see
good morning, Terrence.
And there's a Sabaton music video with the same theme, and it's a tearjerker. Sabaton. Okay. Trying to make a mental note of that. So The Great Gatsby that you said, and like I said, I'm doing this on the fly, early Saturday morning, 6 hours of sleep. And it's probably been about 10 years since I did my last flip through with Great Gatsby. I probably read the book 2 or 3 times, at least late teens, early 20s, or somewhere in there. I still have my copy somewhere that I bought in a used bookstore. But there was the light across the lake that was symbolic of Gatsby, of a love. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know how to set the scene up if you haven't seen it, but there's a house, there's a lake, and you see the house over there, and Gatsby would just be staring across the lake. And finally, towards the end of the book, we get a light. That's the big symbolism. Well, one of many in there, right? There's also the eyes staring at him from the billboard and things like that of a few people. So there was this up and coming writer coming. Absolutely. Yeah. And does your book have the eyes? I think there's a naked lady. The eyeballs are actually naked ladies.
No, it's hard to see it on this one.
Yeah.
It is.
Gotcha. Yeah.
One of the best book jacket covers ever made, I think.
Right. So anyway, we get this up and comer at one point, and I skipped the miniseries in the book. This is one of the few books that had a direct market feel that I actually remember seeing on the newsstand, which was weird because it didn't last long on the newsstand. I don't know where people got it and stuff, right? But I was all sort of like, oh, they went and got another British guy. They're trying to get another Alan Moore coming, right? I was young, a little more jaded than I should have been at that age, a little more cynical, and it was a big mistake, right? Because it was Grant Morrison on Animal Man. Okay. And what I was kind of showed the last 2 issues. I don't know if I'll pop them open and stuff, right? But basically what happens is slowly there's some weird things going on as Alan Moore takes us on this journey. There's a villain who ends up dying in a way that no one had ever died in comics, and that's how it was advertised. That was the cliffhanger. And all of a sudden, when that villain died, in the next issue, he was drawn, inked, and colored. And then all of a sudden, in the next panel, he wasn't colored. And then he was just pencils. And then he was just shapes. And then he was gone from existence. And basically, it went meta. Animal Man ends up taking peyote for a reason, to go on a journey. And when you turn the page, he's freaking out. And you turn another page as he's looking at you, a big splash page of his head, and he's telling the reader, I can see you. So now we're on this meta journey and stuff, right? Now, what really, I can't really recall Grant Morrison doing this, but he pulled some emotional strings there, right? The thing about Animal Man is that he was a family man with a superhero. He had 2 kids and a wife out of somewhere. Grant Morrison started making him more real, I guess, right? Because before this, he was just he was worse than an indie character with the name Animal Man, and the way he was written and his powers, and he had a buzz cut and his suit had scales. It was, kind of cringy. I liked it, So all of a sudden, terrible things started happening to Animal Man. His family finally were killed. Even the cat was killed, and he starts losing it. We get Dark Animal Man a little bit, but now that he knows he's a comic book character, he finds Limbo. And in Limbo, he finds out this is where all the characters that aren't used in books are there. And he finds the Inferior Man and Jim, son of Saturn, and people who remember the Crisis on Infinite Earths, but they know they're in Limbo. They're like, we must be in a story now because nothing happens in Limbo. He really started doing the mind thing. So they set him on a journey, and he ends up like, you're going to have to find the writer, the creator, or whatever they call him. And by God, he wants his family back. So he's going, and it's written where he's like going through deserts and he's going through snowstorms, and all of a sudden he's at his house and it's a desert and the cat's dead. And the man who answers the door when he gets to his house, I should have had these out. I was already flipping through them. When he opens the door of who's living in his house, it turns out to be the creator, and it's Grant Morrison. Good grief. Have you ever read these?
Not that far, no, not to that, but no.
All right. So anyway, like I said, he's got his original Animal Man look. He's gone all the way back. I hope these are showing up.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, and then like I said, when he opens the door, this is our cliffhanger. He says, "Hello, how are you? I'm Grant Morrison." All right. So now he's technically met his creator, and this becomes like sort of an allegory for, I guess, talking to God. And if you'll notice, a monkey on a typewriter could do a better job, is what Morrison's saying. So anyway, after Animal Man's a little bit nuts, we get this photorealistic cover where that's Grant Morrison there with his pet and a cat. And Grant Morrison is a huge animal lover, and all of a sudden he's color different. But we've been seeing that word processor throughout the book of somebody typing on it, right? Writing things as they happen. And so he meets his creator. I'm going to get to the point here, right? And Alan, and basically, he flips out on him. You're doing this just for entertainment? You've killed my family and done all this stuff. And he goes back and forth, and he's like, and who are you? Grant Morrison all of a sudden is talking to a comic book character. He's like, look at you, tall, blonde, young forever. You'll be 25, 30 forever. I'm going to get old. I'm going to lose my hair. I'm going to be gone. And you'll still be 30 years old and blonde and perfect, right? Then he tells him a story. He was like, and you telling me you want your family back. In real life, that doesn't happen. I had a cat a year ago, and he shows him a picture of his cat, and he tells his name, and he died. He had a bone in his lung. And I miss my cat. I want my cat back. So you're like, oh my God, we got issues here. So we're talking about creation and mortality and a little bit of cruelty there, to be a writer. I don't know if he says it in this. He tells them, they're walking around talking, but it's one of the most interesting conversations I've ever seen. Okay. This is so basically he's talking about his mortality. He's talking to the reader. And you just get the feeling, I can't do it. There's some integrity in my story. I can't do it. And then out of nowhere, he tells him, he goes, Grant Morrison goes, we'll stop at nothing, you'll see. All that suffering and the death and the pain in your world is entertainment for us. Why does blood and torture and anguish still excite us? We thought that by making your world more violent, we would make it more realistic, more adult. God help us if that's what it means. Maybe for once we can try to be kind. I'm out of space. I'm out of time. I haven't said anything worthwhile. Nothing left to say. Go home. Go home, buddy. Buddy's his real name. Forget we ever met. And he's sitting there all alone saying, no, I wanted to talk. And Animal Man is now all alone. Grant Morrison has pulled a Sandman and disappeared. And when we turn the page, his home appears around him. He hears a knock at the door, and he has his family again. Grant Morrison went ahead and did it, gave his family. Now, this is where we get to the Great Gatsby part. So the last couple of pages is Grant Morrison on the word processor showing that Buddy hugged his family. He wrote it. But then he goes out here to the lake, and it's the scene from Great Gatsby.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
Right.
So indulge me here if you don't care. He goes, when I was young, I had an imaginary friend called Foxy. He lived in a vast underground kingdom, a utopia ruled over by a peaceful, intelligent foxes. I used to signal him, and he pulls out a flashlight. And what's wild about this is a piece of writing by Grant Morrison where I think he's telling the truth of everything. You know, writers are great liars. This feels authentic. My parents bought me a torch so that I could signal to them. Not a flashlight. We called them torches over here. I used to stand at the top of Angus Oval and shine my torch out towards the hills. Foxy always signaled back. Grant Morrison is telling us, and it's Grant Morrison in here, he signaled back his imaginary friend. That was more than 20 years ago. And here I am again. Don't ask me why. Here I am at the end of the century, toiling up a hill in the bitter wind. I've come to send a signal out in the dark. In the end, it seemed like the only thing worth doing. Are you there? Can you see me? Foxy, I came back. I didn't forget. I came back. And he's shining the light. Okay. The line on the hills stays dark. No one is answering the light. No light at all. Clouds pile up in the darkness, weighted with snow. Curtains are drawn. Windows blink and go dark. Windows whine with the power lines. Wind whines in the power lines. And he's starting to walk away. Stars go out. Streets are empty. Goodbye. So he walks out the street. He's gone. We see the shoreline. And after he's gone, we see the light. His imaginary friend is there and he missed it. And I don't know why it's so existential. I got it. It's one of those things as a kid. I mean, I got like a little tear right here. For something about that just touches me. And I don't know if it's the honesty, the journey of the story, talking about mortality. But it went from being about Buddy Blank to being about Grant Morrison there in the last issue. Very cathartic, you know. So, but there's a lot there. Mortality, the idea of creation, the idea of having a great creator and the power, and why do we suffer as humans? And he set all this up starting in issue 5. So I'm thinking that talking about the heart of the matter with some of these stories, you've got to get to the journey of the story and reach that point where it tugs at you just because you're on the journey. You can't say exactly why that touches you. But with issue 5 to issue 26, this is a little bit of a callback to issue 5 with Wile E. Coyote, a cartoon coming into Buddy Blank's real world. So he set up the whole story, and it just comes together in that moment to where that ending is perfect. It's wild, you know. So that was by Tim Mullins. Thank you very much. You know,
it was wonderful, Tim. You know, now I'm going to have to complete and read it. I mean, I have the comics, I have the trades and the comics, and never got around to finishing it.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad spoiling a 35-year-old story. I apologize.
No, not at all, Tim. I think it's, you know, that ending there when he's looking at the light, and if you in the Gatsby story, because the story is told by the point of view of Nick Carraway, his neighbor, and he sees this stranger, I think, on the balcony one night. I don't think at this point he knows it's Gatsby, but he sees a man, you know, reach out and he sees a light across the way. And later on, Nick learns that it's the reason he's doing that is a woman there who's Nick's cousin named Daisy, and that Gatsby has been doing everything he's been doing,
right,
was for her. And what makes the story, that's so poignant is from the reader's point of view and from Nick's point of view, Daisy is a pretty vacant person, very selfish person, self-absorbed, very reckless. And at the end of the story, when Gatsby thinks he's going to meet up with Daisy, and Nick says, you're better than all of them. And Gatsby decides to use the pool, which he has not used.
Right.
And when he's there in the pool, I think he's probably thinking, things are going to work out. Everything I've done, Daisy's going to be with me. But unbeknownst to him, the husband of the woman that Tom, Daisy's husband, has been having an affair with, the woman that Daisy ran over. And Gatsby then ended up taking the responsibility for it. And then Tom is going to say that it was Gatsby driving, and it was Gatsby who killed this man's wife. This man kills Gatsby.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the news breaks out. Daisy and Tom, they leave. And when at Gatsby's funeral, the only people there are Nick, the father, and a business associate. And like Nick says, Daisy never sent the flowers, didn't acknowledge anything. Now, from our point of view, as the reader, is how could someone be in love with someone like Daisy? But it doesn't matter. Gatsby's in love with her. And she maybe isn't. She is basically an illusion of some kind.
Right.
And it just makes it so, devastating, that ending. But I have to think maybe it was a happy ending for Gatsby, because he's there. He probably just feels the impact of the bullets and probably died instantly.
Yeah. And you got to be immersed in the book. The mystery of Gatsby is part of it also, until you find out who he is. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's definitely a journey to get that impact. I feel like
he's definitely a romantic in the sense that what he does. And Daisy would not have married him the way he looked at it because of his class.
Yeah.
So he had to go and make himself something, even though it's a made up character. And he has to basically be involved in the criminal world to amass basically the material things that he thinks Daisy wants. And there's truth to that. She's a materialistic character.
The perils of growing older and having the black and whites blur into grays, to where you find out, that is part of. There are people out there you would have to do that for, So not just for religion or a relationship. We have what we got here. Pilgrim is here. Red Shirts by John Scalzi was similar to Animal Man. I've never heard that book there. I feel like I've heard Red Shirts, but I'm sure I'm going Star Trek.
Hey, hello, Carson.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so glad he's here. I love the Animal Man run. That's got to be one of the most lovable people on YouTube. Certainly, Tim, I've been meaning to buy the Animal Man Compendium for a while. Looks like I'm adding it to the pile of books to read, and I've been putting Gatsby off for decades. Looks like I better step it up. I would definitely, a little warning. Gore, do you have your next story ready?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to give him a heads up here real quick. When you
Absolutely.
read Animal Man by Grant Morrison started out as a 4-issue miniseries, and it was so successful, or maybe Grant Morrison was impressed people at DC. I don't really know what happened. They continued it. It became an ongoing series. So Grant Morrison started setting up his main story with issue 5. The first 4 issues are fantastic, don't get me wrong, but 5 to 26 is one story with a few little breaks in an issue or here or there. So enjoy. When you read, just realize you're getting we'll call it a prequel, and then the story really starts. And what do you have for us now, Mr. Gore?
Okay. Talking about getting older, right? And The next story that comes from here is when I turn and I look at who the creator was, and of course, even if I had not seen the Q-Bird Burn one, I would have picked it up if I saw who this was here. Um, Basically, before I discuss the story, is when you're aging with someone you love, someone that's extremely important to you, and as you get older through the decades, and I think at one point, someone like you, Tim, people who are watching, those who have been with a partner for a very long time, and that you're in your 80s, and things begin to maybe not go well physically, mentally for a character, and then you have to do something which is very difficult, and maybe put them in a home or worse, right? And then if you have family, you have kids, but there's problems with the kids. There's a friction between the kids and the parents. And from a male point of view, and in the sense of a traditional male point of view, of not just being a provider, that sort of thing, but just trying to be in control of things. When you finally get to that point, you have no control over these things. And you're basically on the brink of maybe doing something you maybe shouldn't do. Which brings us to this story. I opened it, and it's a story called Ex Machina. But I look at who the writer-artist was. It's Paul Chadwick.
Oh. Concrete. Yeah.
Bingo. I knew Concrete. I read Concrete. And I knew this was going to be good, no matter what it was. This is basically what you have here is you have this old man who's just put his wife in a retirement home. His car has broken down. No one is stopping for him. He's outside, like 40 cars have passed, and he's freezing in this car. He's got a gun in the car. And he decides to, his wife had told him he was a fool to get the gun. And he writes a note saying, "I'm sorry, but no one will stop. And I just can't stand the cold." But then someone taps on his window. It's Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And Superman says, "May I get in with you?" into the car. And then Superman starts to warm him up. And then he slowly starts to warm up the car. He's not going to do it too quickly because it may cause problems for the automobile. And then Superman begins to have a conversation with this man. Superman notices the gun. And all he says is, "So why?" And the man says, he's tearing up. It's been so cold. No one is stopping for me. I don't want to die this way. But then Superman says, "Well, it's a curve. Most people haven't seen you when they're making the curve. And those that do are afraid to stop because they may skid off the road." Superman makes a very rational, argument as to why people are not stopping. I mean, he's trying to say people aren't stopping because they're callous or they're indifferent to you. Maybe there's a compelling reason why they're not stopping. But it still doesn't really explain the gun, right? So Superman begins to ask him, he noticed he's got medication. And the medication means because the man is having some muscle atrophy. He's in serious decline, this old man. And he talks about his wife, right, that he had to put away in the sense of this nursing home.
Right.
But then Superman says, "And so you're going to spend Christmas by yourself?" He goes, "Yes. Don't you have any family?" And then the man says, "I do have a daughter." And she goes, "And?" "We haven't spoken in years." And Superman says, "Well, why not?" And he says, "It was who she married." Actually, I didn't object so much as my wife. But when you live with someone, you try to present a united, and then Superman interrupts him and says, "So why don't you just call your daughter?" He goes, "It'll be awkward. She must hate me. She wouldn't want it." And then Superman says this. He says, "Listen, I don't mean to preach here, but there's one thing I know. No person who's lost his or her parents wouldn't like to get back to them, even one of them. This is something I know. Maybe she'll invite you for Christmas dinner." No. She lives in Metropolis. How many years then? Oh, I don't know. And Superman puts his hand on the man's shoulder and says, "My friend, your disease is a long, hard way to go. Nobody should die alone in this world. If not for yourself, do it for me. I like to think I didn't stop here for nothing."
Nice.
Pause there. And the man says that, "All right, not because you saved my life, but because you made me warm." I'll call her. Now, at this point, Superman says, "I'm going to turn on the car." And look, you notice that he's got the gun.
Yeah.
Superman has the gun in his hand. Excuse me. And that suicide note, he says, "Give me that piece of paper." And he says, "These are directions. I have many friends here," he says, "around this area. And I want you to go to these people and have a good Christmas dinner." He goes, "I couldn't." Because that's nonsense.
Right.
They'll love to have you. Besides, you're not going to find an open service station with a V belt on Christmas night. You're not going to get far with this battery. He goes, "I'll phone them." He goes, "They're good folks. They helped me out after I had some trouble in space one time. Now, I'm trusting you to be discreet about this. They're an older couple, like you. They're private people."
Right.
He goes, "I'll never tell anyone," he says. He gets into the car. Superman flies away, and he's heading to Smallville. Presumably it's the Kents he's going to go spend time with. And then the crumbles of the gun.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's how it ends. When I read that, I was like, wow, Chadwick, but this is a Superman story. Instead of flying them away, then Superman just speaks to them in a very cool voice, very rational voice, compassionate voice. And when he says that part about, he doesn't tell him about this happened to him, that he lost his parents, but he just tells him almost, something that's truthful. He says, if you can be with someone that you lost, right? So call your daughter.
The thing about the story is the construction of it. I don't think people realize how well, I mean, we have well-versed readers here, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
people excluded here. We're the seasoned guys in here, But first of all, he used Superman right. Superman has a mystique of hope and light. He lightens up a story. That man was in a dark place. And then Superman pops up. That's how you use Superman. I mean, there's many ways to use Superman, but in a story like that, that's what Superman was. He was, pretty much hope that popped up. The other thing is that look at how impactful and emotional that story was in just a few pages. How he tapped so many emotions in his artwork that he emoted with that man. Yeah. It's deceptively on how simple that story looks, and that's a very impactful story that is perfect in just those few pages for exactly what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
And you got it. You were there as you were telling the story. I could see it. I could hear a voice. I could almost hear that old man's voice, even though I've never met him. But we know somebody like that.
True.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Yeah, for those who have not read Concrete by Chadwick, I highly recommend that book. Hey, good morning, Chaos.
Hi, Chris. You ready to buy some comics you never would have considered, because Gore talked about them? Yeah, that's what
No,
happened.
no, Terrence and Chris, they're well read.
Now,
Just well read.
Concrete was actually one of the books I was going to try to pull for this because, like I said, I did this on the fly after I got home last night and a little bit this morning. And I'm so glad you brought up a Chadwick because I couldn't think of exactly where to do with Concrete. What I have is limited and scattered. I've got like collected specials, and I'm trying to get the first 10 issues of the Dark Horse series that came out like in 88, 89. I've got sporadic issues. I didn't have anything that popped into my head of exactly that would have fit this, but I think you nailed it. I've got the bodyguard stuff. You know what I mean? When he was the bodyguard for the guy.
Continue. I'm going to turn off this. I have a little bit of shade over here. Continue, Tim.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So the next book you need to go out and buy in some form or not. It's just 3 issues.
Oh, Oh my goodness. Okay.
So this is called We 3. I'll give you a little trivia here in a minute, but when Grant Morrison, I think this is from 2004-ish, Grant Morrison leaves the X-Men, comes over to DC, and now he's sort of experimenting with storytelling, right? And he comes out with a series of 3-issue miniseries. He wants to see how much information he can convey, but he gets with Frank Quietly on this.
Yeah.
And with Frank Quietly, this is it's still Frank Quietly, but it's got a cinematic manga feel to parts of it. Okay. Now, Gore, the last dog movie, a movie about a dog that I watched was My Dog Skip, and that was a long time ago. And I was specifically I work with intellectually delayed individuals, and some of them actually lived on their own back then. And 3 of them decided to have revenge on me because we would go to the movies every now and then. I would take them to the movies, and they saw Castaway, and my 3 individuals got scared when the theater went dark during the plane wreck and stuff. Now, just because they're intellectually delayed doesn't mean they're not defined by that disability. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah, so they all got together. I didn't even know they knew how to talk to each other across their town they lived in. And they were like, we're going to take Tim to see My Dog Skip, because I told one of them about how I feel about dogs. And I didn't know that at the end of My Dog Skip, he gets old and frail, and they're all looking at me laughing like we got you back. Right. So I don't like when things happen to animals. So this tugged at my heartstrings, right? My kryptonite is a hurt animal or a suffering animal. You know what I mean? I can't even stand seeing an empty food bowl for my cats in my house. So We 3 comes out, and this story is a little bit of talking about experimentation with animals. Now, the little trivia with this is, as you see, We 3 is Grant Morrison started playing with the numbers in the X-Men universe. Weapon X isn't the experiment. It's the 10th experiment trying to make a super soldier in the Marvel universe. So Wolverine ends up being the 10th experiment. Oh my God, I'm going blank. We got to see Weapon 13 in his run. Phantasmo. I can't think of his name now, right? So when you read Grant Morrison, you can actually break the boundaries of shared universes and the company he's working at. And this actually works into the tapestry where this could be a Marvel book, because We 3 could be Weapon 3. And this is the 3rd experiment leading to Wolverine. You follow me? Weapon 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10, 13. Anyway, so these animals, our dog, I think their names are like Pirate and we got Bandit. Let me see, what's the cat's name? Tinker. Okay, so whoops. So we see the dog, the cat, and the rabbit, and the covers. There's 3 issues, and the covers are, they're little kids' handwriting, families' handwriting. Their pets are missing. Well, a government agency went out and kidnapped them and made them weapons. They're in armor that's attached to their body, and they can talk. They have limited ability to talk, so we can hear them talk. And due to the experiments they're doing, if I remember right, this senator or somebody or some government official bust into the lab. Like, what the hell's going on here? Maybe he wants to take it over. I can't remember. It's inconsequential. It's just the thing that gets the story going, right? And they escape. And as they're all talking, like, yay, we're out of there, they want to go home. So they all get together and they just want to go home. But people in that lab are like, oh no. So they're sending killers, other animals after them. I think it was like a pit bull in armor. These rats that have no head, they got drills for heads, are coming after them. And you're just, I mean, you are, where they're animals and they're still innocent and they're talking about things. I'm trying to find a good page because it's very deconstructed. Not a lot of talk at the beginning. Anyway, that's going to have to do. So there they are.
Yeah.
Okay. And look at him. The way Frank quietly even draws the dog, the Labrador. I mean, he's just, the innocence is just portraying there, right?
There's a tough story.
Yeah. So, and then here's the rats I was talking about. They're making them, they fix things, if you will. Okay. So yeah, the whole thing is just about them getting home and the way they talk. Good dog. Have I been a good dog? So while they're trying to do these experiments and stuff, they still have the animal personalities of the dog wanting to please its master, even though he doesn't really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So you can tell that Grant Morrison is a big animal lover in this, right? And like I said, this feels like an Akira page to me.
Wow.
Right. So it was just how much story can they tell? And like I said, it's visual. You have to put it together. And then we get big cinematic things like this. Okay. And then there's stakes in this, right? When they had that experimental dog, I don't know if it's a Rottweiler, I can't remember if it's a pit bull. It's a killer, and it's coming after them. And they get help from a homeless man. Somebody else kind of finds the animals, and one of them makes it home. Or thanks, and maybe there's a different family. I'm butchering it. It's been forever. But anyway, one of them makes it home. And I can't remember if it's the actual family or a family that lives in the home. And he's like, oh, I'm home. And he's expecting to get loved on and everything. And they're like, he's an alien. It's an alien. The kids are freaking out because he's all in this armor and stuff. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. They just tug at the heartstrings, right? And they go through hell. I mean, if you are into plague dogs, Watership Down, things like that, this is your thing.
Yeah.
So the heartstrings, Rover Red Charlie by Garth Ennis. I was going to pull that down, but I was like, I think I have enough. I pulled out. Here's the beast that comes after them. He does not give up. Yeah. He's bigger than them. He's more powerful than them. But the good thing is I'm going to ruin the ending. They finally get a master. They are finally they get out of their bodysuits, and we jump forward at the end, wondering how they are, because they go through hell. The Labrador about dies protecting all of them. Okay. And like I said, I know I'm butchering the story. And then we find out that some people get what they need. And then we find out that a homeless guy has taken the animals in. And somebody who was involved with the lab recognizes the animals, doesn't say anything, and gives money to the homeless man to take care of the animals. I'm not going to say if the rabbit lived or not. I don't want to completely ruin it. But, you don't have to be a big animal lover or an animal rights person to get this. You've just got to have a heart and see the innocence and stuff. Frank Quitely was just as important in this story as Grant Morrison for what he was able to emote and convey with those animals. These animals feel like they're living, breathing animals. The cat acts like a cat. The dog acts like a dog. And then you're a little surprised about the rabbit. You end up cheering for the rabbit. You know what I mean? The rabbit ends up having a bit of a personality that you're just, it's wide open. Rats usually, they usually run. Rabbits usually run and stuff. What happens when a rabbit doesn't have to run? Jackrabbits and stuff will fight each other and box and things. So there's some things in there.
I was introduced to that book either by you or the other Tim Morant.
Right.
When I started watching YouTube videos 12, 13 years ago, comic related ones. And I don't know when you made a video about it, Tim, but I know Tim Moran had talked about it, and I began watching both of your videos around the same time. And I remember I wasn't familiar with the book until either you or the other Tim pointed it out to me.
Right.
And that's one thing about these channels, especially these older channels like yours, Terrence, who's here, and others. When I joined YouTube, and of course Jared, discussing comics, because I'd stopped reading comics for a while, and to see what was out there. I mean, I already knew Grant Morrison, but I didn't know that book.
Right.
I didn't know who Quietly was, and then but they're very affecting stories, and it's kind of stories that I like. I do like these kind of stories, and so anyway, I wanted to just share that with you. This was one of the earliest videos I remember seeing with you or Tim, probably both of you, I suppose.
Awesome, man. I think I appreciate that very much. The effect of that story is that you have Grant Morrison coming off of the X-Men. Before that, he was doing Invisible and Doom Patrol. Okay. And then he comes out and he's coming out with these little mini series, and one is called Sea Guy, which he's got a lot of things going on out there. This is Grant Morrison. He's going to write a mind trip for you. You know what I mean? He's Steve Gerber times.
That's what he's known for. Yeah, that's right.
Right. So all of a sudden to go into We Three and get a story like that out of him, it was a bit of a shock. You know what I mean? Like, not shock. You just weren't prepared. You don't expect. You were waiting for Grant Morrison. You weren't expecting, to sit here and be like, leave that dog alone. Because throughout the whole book, you're just on a roller coaster with the stakes that this government wants those animals killed. And you're just like, leave them alone. It feels like somebody's coming after your dog,
Well, you mentioned Garth Ennis in that other book. This is more like Garth Ennis territory.
Yeah.
But Grant executed it quite beautifully. With help with Quietly.
It kind of reminds me of rock bands in the 80s. Every bad boy had a soft side, and we got a power ballad,
It's true.
They had to come up with a clever translation to We Three in Portuguese. They settled with Arnamals, which doesn't roll off the tongue, but it highlights arma, weapon, inside the word animals. Gotcha. That's pretty cool. Little facts like that really makes the hobby interesting. So who else do we have here? All right. And people are talking out there. Awesome. Great. Okay, Gore. By all means, what do you got next there, Gore?
Okay, the third story that I, from this little issue here. Again, this was $1, and the dollar bin.
You definitely got your money's worth out of this.
I know, and I'm gonna emphasize the year. It's 1989, and when I read this next story, and for a moment I had to think of. I had forgotten this came out in '89. And I'll set it up. Basically, is imagine you're a performer. Your life is to entertain people. You like the applause. You like the attention. And then that's taken away from you. You've lost that ability. And you enjoy the glory. You enjoy that attention. And now it's gone. Right? So having that in mind is the third story that I really enjoyed here. And I think it might be my favorite, in this one here. It's a dead man story.
Oh.
Boston Brand. Okay.
Philip Jose Farmer.
And the team here is interesting.
Philip Jose Garcia Lopez. Sorry.
Yeah. It's Dick Giordano.
Okay.
The colorist is Tom McCraw. Letterer is Stevie Haney, and Mark Waid is the editor. I didn't mention that earlier. Now, when I saw who the writer was, I'm thinking, where do I know that name? It wasn't until afterwards I'm thinking, I know that name from somewhere. Now, Paolo's going to know it immediately. It's Alan Burnett. You might know it too, Alan Burnett.
A little bit, yeah.
Now, I'll get to him in a bit, what story it was that I had read by him previously. And then I actually made a video about that other comic in years past. So what you have here is Boston Brand, who, like in Quantum Leap, can inhabit the bodies of people, right? And you have him here on Christmas Eve. He's just inhabited the body of a a man who does leverage buyouts, fires people, you sell the companies. But now he's inhabited his body and given a severance pay to all his employees and done a few other nice gestures. And the way Boston Brand operates, when he inhabits your body, he becomes you, and you have no memory of what happens. And you're not conscious of what's happened. You just wake up and what happened to me? Where am I? Why am I here? Not knowing that he's been inside you. Now, what I found just really compelling about this story is that Boston Brand doesn't like Christmas.
Right.
One, generally people are doing nice things. No one really needs him. And he feels very, very lonely. So he jumps into the body of this woman here. But then he finds this young man here, a very happy young man. And this is him talking. He says, with the young man there with his girlfriend, he says, good, body strong, athletic, aroused, definitely aroused, with good reason. Excuse me, miss, but have you ever considered marrying a ghost? And he inhabits the body of this man. And he's enjoying it very, very much. And they're going to a party with friends and family. He goes, they welcome me like old friends. And for a moment, I let myself believe that they are old friends. I feel like a kid again on Christmas morning. I feel like I belong here. Like I've always been here. And when I sit down to dinner, it's like any Christmas I ever had as a kid. When Dad would carry me like a bird, I would have all this food. And then he realizes, except it's not me.
Yep.
It's not my Christmas at all. It's Paul's. And so his conscience begins to weigh at him.
Right.
He acknowledges he's robbing this man.
Because of sins of the flesh is what we're trying to get at.
He says, and he says this, he says, I try to tell myself how lucky he is, how I'm only stealing a fraction of his life. But however I look at it, I'm stealing it.
Mm-hmm.
What if this lucky guy were to die tomorrow? What if this were his last Christmas? Hell, what if this were his best Christmas? What right do I have to take that from him? He says, none at all. And he leaves his body and leaves this poor man bewildered, wondering, what am I doing here? How did I get here?
Yeah.
And he acknowledges that. He says, I know I've left him with all this confusion. But like I always do, whenever I leave somebody's body, that's what happens. Now that right there, I thought was excellent. I thought was really well done. But then it takes a turn that I did not expect. And here we have Boston Brand. He's really angry. He says, I was given this by this, is it Rama, the god, the Hindu god, I think, that gave him this power, right, when he was killed in the circus. And he says, this is some reward that I get? This is what I get? This is my life? He goes, some reward. And then he goes, all the good I do. Now he starts fitting for this. All the good that I've done. Because he acknowledged he is a hero. He's done a lot of good. But no one knows it. And then this person shows up. And this person, it's a woman. And she says, is that why you do it? For the reward? And he goes, you can see me.
Right.
Because remember, he can't be seen by people.
I'm starting to remember this. Yeah.
He can be seen by people. And so he begins to say, are you with Madame Xanadu? Are you part of that circle? And she goes, me? She goes, oh, no magic. And he goes, how? And she goes, does it matter that I can see you? And so he's wondering who the hell she is, he says. Literally, he says, who the hell is she in his head? And he goes, and she says, could it be what's really bothering you is the fact that all these people around us don't even know what you've done on their behalf? He goes, yeah, and what if it is? I knock myself out fighting for them. But does anyone know? Does anyone care? And she responds, probably not. I mean, you are dead. It comes with the territory. Oh, thanks. Feel much better now, right? And so she says, and I like the way this was drawn by Dick Giordano. She says, so you want recognition then? You want glory. And he tries to say, no, it's not glory that I want. And then he talks about how he used to be a performer. He did love the attention of people. That's why he did it. And that was taken away from him. And then she just cuts him off and says, you soared and were cut down at your height. Maybe there's a reason for it. And she calls him by his name, Boston. And she says, take off this mask. And listen to me, she says. Now she says the word we. We don't do it for the glory. We don't do it for the recognition. We do it because it needs to be done. Because if we don't, no one else will.
Mm-hmm.
And we do it even if no one knows what we've done. Even if no one knows we exist. Even if no one remembers we ever existed. And he says, yeah, he feels really bad now. And she continues. She goes, no, it's okay. You're only human. You are still human, Boston. Don't be ashamed of it. Rejoice in it. Because it means your spirit, as flawed or selfish as your spirits can be, it's still alive.
Nice.
And she says, well, I have to go. I have business to attend to. Merry Christmas, Boston. She goes, hey, wait a minute. Who are you? How can you see me? I don't even know your name. And this is the part when it struck me. She goes, my name is Kara.
Mm-hmm.
Super.
Yeah.
Though I doubt that'll mean anything to you. And she was right. It didn't. And I said, that's Supergirl. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What year is this? That's when I flipped the year.
See,
Supergirl is dead. Wait a minute. No, she died.
I'm so glad you got that out. I almost pulled that book out for this. It's right there. Yes.
She died in Crisis.
Right.
She took the blow that was aimed at her, at Superman.
Right.
She took that deadly blow. Her timeline was erased.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he doesn't recognize her. So when she makes that comment of, we do think it's the right thing to do, people don't remember it. People don't remember that I exist. Instead of writing it in a very preachy way, it's done in this manner, the way I just read it, the way it was written.
It's not a case of she's leading. It's by her example. That's a better way to put it than what I was about to say. She is not telling him to do anything that she's not already doing. The fallen angel, What's wild is if you look forward to Peter David, he ends up doing a fallen angel thing where people thought it was Supergirl and things like that. And that could actually tie into it. That's I've never put that together. So there's so much weight to that story with Kara popping up. Yeah.
The thing is about Kara is that this timeline is really, it's erased to be forgotten for what she did. And to give you an idea here, fighting the Anti-Monitor, George Bettis, my goodness, what he could do with this.
So Into the Silent Night, I want to give them a real quick synopsis. Into the Silent Night was where there's 5 worlds left in Crisis after all, the Anti-Monitor's taken them all. They know where the Anti-Monitor is. They rally up the most powerful of the superheroes. There's no joking around here, man. There's no Blue Beetle going out there, man. It's Martian Manhunter. It's Ultra Boy. It's Mon-El. It's Supergirl. It's Superman. It's Captain Atom. It's the powerful of the powerful, right?
Yeah.
So they go in there and there's a showdown with the Anti-Monitor, and he's holding his own. And this is a freaking battle. And you got all the heroes with heat vision and those laser eyes, are bashing in there. They've almost got the anti-monitor down, but being a villain, he's got an ace up his sleeve, and everybody has to get out of there or they're going to die. And Kara ends up smacking around Superman saying, "Get out of here." And she is just like screaming at him. She becomes like a warrior. She knows she's going to die. And she's like mouthing off to the anti-monitor as she's bashing him into the ground and stuff. And she dies. It was a gut punch when you read that. Yep.
Absolutely.
The biggest difference between Supergirl and Batgirl is Supergirl to this day still has people who only collect comics that has Supergirl in them. She has a unique fandom. There was people buying just adventure comics from the 70s and stuff with Supergirl and stuff. Yeah. So that story there. Yeah.
This is
my
the one
segue, sir. I almost pulled that out. I am not joking. Yeah. That is
my copy when I was a kid. I mean, like Tim says, those of us who have read it at the time, it was just, I like Supergirl, but this made me a Supergirl. I really admired the character of what Wolfman and Bettis did here.
Yeah.
And so so when I saw this done by Burnett, the story here is her story is actually even sadder than his, because at least with Boston, people at one point we know who he is, but with her, it's like, again, that timeline doesn't exist. It's almost like another dimension to fantasy story. But she's not, there's no self-pity in her. There's nothing like this. I mean, she's not saying everyone forgot what I did. There's no issue with that. None. She's just like Clark is, or like Captain America would be. These great heroes that we have who just do the right thing because it's the damn right thing to do. Doesn't matter if you know it, everyone knows it, no one has to know it. And I'm never going to talk about it. There's nothing to talk about. This is the way we operate. And Kara's not even a human. Neither is Kal-El. They're all aliens. They're all basically, visiting this planet, and they're being more human than the humans are. Right. And Boston Brand was human. And like she says, and so, it is human. So this story of like, oh my goodness, and you're a Legion of Superheroes guy. That wonderful story that was continued in the direct edition, where on the year of her death, because only a few people know she existed, and you have Brainiac. Brainiac on the year of her death commemorates it, and he just falls apart on that day. And the thing is, whenever she does appear, he has to have a straight face when she travels into the future, because he can't basically tell her how she's going to die. He can't really tell her that she's going to die, but most people are going to forget she ever existed. And it's a wonderful issue by Paul Levitz. And I think LaRocca did the artwork, I think. So, but in any event, this little story here, Alan Burnett, the way I know him is that he did a wonderful Brave and the Bold story about the memoirs of Bruce Wayne. And I should have taken the issue. It is. And the Brave and the Bold story that he wrote is Bruce Wayne remembering his love affair and marriage with Selina Kyle. And he's writing his memoirs after her death. And it's a very powerful story, a Batman story that Alan Burnett did, the same one who did this Deadman story. And that's where I said, that's why I know that name. So
that's fantastic. I just know Alan Burnett from animation stuff.
I think he did a lot of television. I think what he's known for television.
I know the guy. I know he's in the 70s because I've seen his stuff forever pop up. And the fact that he did a Deadman story, I just feel like he knew that character. He knew Supergirl. And I feel like the guy read comics in the 60s and 70s without a doubt. And I feel like that's kind of a story that might have been percolating in his head. You know what I mean? Like that's why it's a sporadic story out of nowhere. You know what I mean? I don't know. I love that. I absolutely love that one. Well done, Gore. That was an excellent selection. Excellent.
And so those three stories, and other ones are really good. But those three are the ones that I said, wow. So
you segue to a few things here. I'm gonna go pretty quick on my next one. We got about half an hour. We're gonna have to do a part 2, sir. Are you up for a part 2?
Absolutely, Tim. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So we were talking beforehand when we came on here, before we came on here about like honorable mentions, and you actually had we kind of met with one there. The honorable mentions that I'm not knowledgeable enough to like pull down and show a specific issue is things like Strangers in Paradise,
Thought about that too.
random 7-page stories of the Spirit by Will Eisner. I don't have Contract with God. I wish I had that one. A Contract with God. That'll
That's just
tug
good
at
too.
your heartstrings. There's things like Immortal Hulk 13, Fantastic, all these little things. But the Strangers in Paradise is that's a journey, and then man, there's heartbreak and
Oh
string
yeah.
all through that. They mix in some mob stuff with Kachu to keep it an action in a comic book. You know, Terry Moore does well. But there's a book that nobody's going to be surprised I'm going to pop up here, and I'm going to get through it pretty quick. Make sure I don't go down the well. But like Strangers in Paradise, there's another one where we were on an 80 issue journey with a lot of other things going on, right? And it had the theme of fathers and sons all the way through it, right? And it's Starman coming down towards the end. Okay. Now, the reason I've talked about all that journey and stuff is that Starman, you start with issue 0, you go all the way to the end, and it pays off. Jack and his father, the original Starman, get closer. Okay. They were estranged. The mother is dead. They're complete opposite. Jack actually takes more after his mother. He was into punk rock, counterculture, antiques, art, while his father is an atheist physicist scientist that helped Einstein worked with Einstein, actually went crazy for a while, if you will, and was in asylum. They pulled that in. And he was part of the team that came up with the atomic bomb. And that was one of the things that made him snap a little bit, realizing what he had done, right? So this whole story, basically, he has an older brother who ended up taking up the Starman mantle, killed the first night on patrol. He'd already popped up in a comic book two before that. But the night that he is on Opal City, he's standing on a glorious Art Deco building. He's looking all. He's in the uniform with the star, and he takes off in our trope of heroes, and he's shot right through the star in the chest and goes down. And his father wants him to take over after he went after the people that did that. But Jack is different. Jack is not going to wear the costume. Jack wears in the air. He's into old things. And he's telling his father, I'm not going on patrol. I'm not going to do this and that. He's trying to get out of it. He's trying to rebuild his antique business that got blown up as part of that first storyline. And that was symbolic of Jack rebuilding his life and his relationship with his father, in my opinion. James Robinson's a fantastic writer. He's a great writer where nothing is wasted. If something is in the book, it means something, right? So things happened where he says, well, I'm not going to go on patrol. I'm not going to do this. And I love this line. This, as I'm talking to you, this may really have been what made me a fan of the book. His father looks at him. And I like the idea of like, once you get into something, you're in that world. Like divorce, you can't really say anything about divorce until you get divorced. And it's like you join a club with people. People open up about things they never would because you can now understand it because you experienced it. But he said, Dad, I'm not going to go on. I'm not going to go on patrol. I'm not wearing the silly costumes. He went, oh, you think you're going to hide in this antique shop, and all this stuff. He's like, no, the weirdness will find you now. And I love that. The fact that in the superhero world, once you start getting into it and you step into that world, it's going to find you, because I feel like I've experienced that. It's like I've never seen a red Volkswagen before. And once you see one, it's like they're everywhere. You know what I mean? They've been there the whole time, but now your eyes are opened up to it. So as he goes through this journey, he and his father do get closer, and they have to work together. They have their fights. They talk about the mom. And then something happens to where Jack has to go off into space. Right? He's got to go out into space because his girlfriend asked him to, because her brother is out in space. I'm not going to ruin who that is, but it ties into the Starman mythos, right? Anyway, so what happens is that he ends up getting the technology from a lot of places, and he ends up getting a AI version. That's the best way to put it, of his father. It's his father. It's his personality, and he ends up spending time in space with his father. They end up going on an adventure where Jack goes out in time, back in time, and he ends up on Krypton, and he meets a teenage Jor-El.
Hmm.
And Jor-El is not getting along with his father. And he's out exploring in the world in the raw dirt. Like, what is this heathen? My son's a heathen. You know what I mean? So anyway, Jack Knight is actually responsible for Jor-El finding Earth to send Superman. We'll just put it there. So time goes by. That was like issue 51. We're up to issue 75. And he meets Superman flies up beside of him. And he's like, I've been meaning to call you since I got back to Earth. And he has a talk with him about his father, what he was like. Superman who's never met his father.
Yeah.
Jack who's had a father. It wasn't close with him forever. And Jack's father has died in a battle with the Mist, died a hero. At just when Jack got to finally have a good relationship with his dad.
Wow.
Every year in the comic book, his brother would come back and he would have a talk with David. And this was catalyst for other stories and things. But for one night, he would be able to talk to the ghost of Jack. Right? So this has been going on since 1994. We're in 2001. And then finally, the last visit with his brother David, he brings his dead father with him. And it's all established in the book. It's not a MacGuffin. It's not a ripoff. It's like, so that's what this has been about. It's almost like David knew there would be a day. So in the midst of all this about fathers and sons and things, there is they're cliches for a reason. The father becomes the son, becomes the father, becomes the son, you know. And in the midst of this, and I'm going to say screw Gail Simone and her refrigerator's website on this, but the Mist's daughter ends up having a baby with Jack against his will and tells him, I'm going to raise the baby to be evil and to come kill you. And she was insane. So Jack ends up having a baby out there, a boy. And things have led to where he gets his son back, and he retires being Starman, and he passes the mantle to what was she called? The Star Spangled Kid, who becomes Star Girl, who will become Star Woman. Okay, so Jack, the last issue, gets to retire from all the superhero stuff, and now gets to be a father. He's a better man now.
That's how it ends, Tim. It's all James Robinson, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that, well, how can I say this? That is bullet point, and a little bit of spoon feeding. Yeah. The whole series was leading to this 80 issue in. Okay.
That's wonderful. Wow.
Yeah, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. So and what's great is about some of these points that tug on the heartstrings and the themes and things like that. He writes it in a way to where it is so much better if you follow from beginning to end, but if you haven't, you still get it, right? That little talk with Superman, you just knew what was coming. You know what I mean? Yeah. And one more, just kind of go with this, right? I was not a fan of this is a theme, right? Of fathers and sons. And I'm, like I said, I'm going quick here. I wasn't a fan of Flashpoint.
Okay.
At all. Okay. But it is what it is. Didn't hate it, but didn't like it. Real decompressed storytelling. It's the structure. And I've actually got an email I have from 2002 where things happen in the Flashpoint universe that I have in an email called Howler Mouse Builds a Universe. I've got an old video on it. And I had the Amazons going to war with Atlantis. There were things that I came up with. Okay. I actually sent it to Dan Didio, and he let me know that he can't take things that are unsolicited or solicited and stuff and look at them. So I'll just leave it there, right? But anyway, so the whole point of Flashpoint is, God, was it Barry Allen or Wally West? Oh my God, I'm going blank. Let me get a cup of coffee here. Anyway, one of the Flashes. I'm so ashamed of myself. That damn Flash movie kind of took the plot of this and it's messed me up, man. Anyway, Flashpoint, the Flash decides to go back in time and save his mother, right? And this little ripple effect ends up messing up everything.
Yeah.
And I didn't really agree with this because timeline-wise, I always thought that, anyway, I thought certain characters were older or younger than other characters. So a lot of stuff that happened to Superman and Batman made no sense to me. You know what I mean? But you got to let it go. But anyway, he saves his mother. The ripple effect is horrible. And now we have Superman in an underground bunker. He's never seen the sun. And he's a little tiny and psychotic. But with Batman, it turns out that on the night in Crime Alley, when it was Martha Wayne, Thomas Wayne, and little Bruce going down the alleyway, that he wanted to go down as a shortcut after seeing the movie Zorro and stuff, right? That Joe Chill or whoever it was came out, and it wasn't the parents that were killed, it was little Bruce Wayne. And this caused a big split to where we had Thomas Wayne somehow become Batman, and we have Martha Wayne becoming the Joker, right? It made her snap, right? So anyway, Thomas Wayne, Batman, ends up helping the Flash, and he writes a note because he knows that his reality is going to be gone. And he writes a note and he hands it to the Flash. So the Flash restores reality, but we have the DC-52. It's a little bit different. And at the end of the story, we see Batman working in the Batcave. Flash comes up, tries to kind of tell him something. The pain in his eyes, he knows this is going to hurt. I mean, Jeff Johns did a great, with this little scene at the end, it was Barry Allen. So he's talking to Batman, like, get to the point, let me know what it is. He tries to tell him what's going on, and he tells him, I have a letter from your father from another timeline.
That's right.
So it's the pacing that works. After not liking this series because of the construction, Jeff Johns goes back to writing a comic book story at the end for this scene the right way. We're seeing faces, emotion, body language. You're right. You're in the moment, the way it's passed. And I'm doing a horrible job here. But anyway, here's the end of the letter. He sees who it's from. And we see Batman who's already peeled off the mask. And we see the little boy crying here at the end. Those last few pages were so much better than anything. Yeah, they could have ended the story there. I would have preferred they did. But of course we get, Bruce Wayne saying, you're a hell of a messenger. Thank you, friend. And then we get, we pull out, I would have ended it with Batman just crying in tears. I would have just left it there on the emotional high point.
Wow.
But they had another page to fill, So yeah, out of everything in Flashpoint, the last, I don't know what that was, 3 or 4 pages was better than anything that I thought was in Flashpoint. Construction wise, plot wise, you really had to turn your brain off with Flashpoint. You really did. So yeah, it was Barry Allen going back and all that stuff. I haven't read that. I've only read Flashpoint one time, and that's as it came out. And I was like, oh God, I almost sold it 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, no, this is history. This was the catalyst. Leave it, you'll have to reference it at some point. You might as well have it, All right, what we got?
No, that's wonderful, Tim. Yeah, I'd forgotten that Flashpoint story. And the thing is, ever since then, this whole Flashpoint has been part of the Flash stories constant. And it gets kind of tiresome now.
Great. We have Paolo here. I do have a couple of Alan Burnett stories here and there. Thor and Batman, some movie novelizations. He did do cartoons. I'm not remembering this wrong, right?
No, I know he did television. That's what I on it.
So Tim, I've been rereading Crisis, although the box set is incomplete over the last few months. It definitely makes you appreciate comic books of the past. I wonder if he's on delay. Contract with God. Oh no, I haven't read comments in a while, have I? Contract with God is amazing. I was lucky enough to snag a first printing when I was working at a bookstore back in the 90s. Thought Flashpoint was just okay overall, but the ending was definitely a highlight. Agree with you, Seaward. Yeah. That was the only good part of Flashpoint. There's people that love Flashpoint. They love it. I mean, Barry had only been back from the dead for a few months at this point. Yeah. I've got the Flash Rebirth, and actually, I think I was a Barry fan. I liked Wally West. Wally West earned that, man. Well, I'm not going down that, but Wally West, thumbs up. Barry Allen, thumbs up. There's room for everybody.
Yeah, well, Barry in Crisis, I don't remember the order. Did he die first, and then it was Kara?
No, that was the magic of Crisis. It was but you already know this. For people that haven't read it, it was a 1-2 punch. They took out Supergirl, so you think that was the big death.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that was like the end of Act 2. You know what I mean? You thought. So you didn't see the next death coming. So when Barry Allen died, you just saw Supergirl die. You had never seen anything structured like that in comics that I can think of, where you're going to have somebody him die in issue 8. I was like, oh my God, you got the feeling that the last 4 issues, they'll take out anybody. That's what they accomplished.
Yeah.
Anybody can die. It raised the stakes. But the Flash had to die. I got an old review of Crisis, and Flash had to die, in my opinion, because he started the Silver Age. This is the end of this universe. That's why the
right.
Flash.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway.
Those are wonderful stories. Absolutely brilliant stuff. That's why when Secret Wars came out,
yeah,
it was difficult for me with Secret Wars because there was different reasons why I had difficulty with Secret Wars, and I guess this didn't have that drama or the tragedy that Crisis did,
right.
and it just didn't have that. It's not fair. Secret Wars has its own thing. And it's a beloved series. I mean, people, in my shop, they always ask for Secret Wars. They don't ask for Crisis. They rarely ask for anything with Crisis related. But if it's Secret Wars, they like that series. Of course, they like the Spider-Man in the black suit. That's more speculator stuff.
Right.
But still, it's just one that that doesn't captivate me. Unlike Crisis. Crisis is just brilliant. How Bettis and Wolfman did this is still amazes me.
Oh, I'll talk about Crisis in a heartbeat. I mean, we need to do a show if you want to do a Crisis deep dive.
Yeah, one day that'd be nice. I have to reread it, and it's just it much better than I do because you read all the other tie-ins. I did not, and but still, at the core,
I've even got the interviews of Marv Wolfman talking about where the Monitor came from, going back to his High Evolutionary and the Librarian. He came up with the idea in the 70s at Marvel for what became the Monitor.
Yeah,
I mean,
master storytellers.
Even the story leading up to it is fantastic, Wow. So that's it. Do you have another book here? I can go a little bit past, I can go a little bit past 10. Like I said, for people that don't know, Gore knows, my stepson is graduating today. We got to have him 11:30 Eastern time where he needs to be, and I still got to wash my nasty ass. But anyway, my vodka soaked body, What do you got for us, Gore? Sorry, man, I went lowbrow,
No, he did not go lowbrow. A Sergeant Rock story. This is
here we go.
Annual number 2 from 1982. Again, something I just came across at my comic shop. Again, my dollar bin. I mean, these books really. There's only a few people that collect these books.
This is the magic of comics. It's a treasure hunt. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to run across, and you go through a lot of standard stuff, and then you'll just find that little gem, that little diamond out there hidden amongst all that.
Because I mean, the handful of Sergeant Rock comics I've read, if they're written by Robert Kanigher, they've never disappointed me. They're always going to be engaging. You're going to get a good story, no matter who the artist is on the book. And this one, I saw it, and it was an interesting cover. I think it's by Kubert. Yeah, it's by Joe Kubert. So I began to read the story. And basically, I'll set it up for you here. You have this scene that it opens with. You have these two men on a cable car, and it's Rock and his brother Larry.
Okay.
And then we get a backstory as to how we got there. And briefly, what happened is that Rock has one letter from his brother. His brother was fighting in the Philippines. He was a baton, and he was able to send one letter. And his brother, Rock, Frank, he rereads this letter over and over and over, where the brother talks about the battle with the Japanese. He had a serious injury where he got some shrapnel in his head that causes him intense pain. And whenever he goes into battle, he completely becomes unhinged. And he's traveling with General MacArthur. This is the brother, mind you. And MacArthur wants him to get treatment. He wants him to have surgery. But the brother doesn't want to do it. He says, no, I'll be fine. So MacArthur's traveled from the Philippines to Australia. And this is all in this really lengthy letter that Rock likes to read. Now, Juxtaposed with that are two flashbacks, which are important in the story, is when Rock is remembering their childhood. And he's remembering when his brother is getting beaten up by a neighborhood bully who wants his skates. But like it says here, their mother worked really hard for those skates. And it sounds like they were working class. The mother had to scrub a lot of floors for those skates.
Right on.
And so the little boy doesn't want to part with them. So Rock shows up and takes the beating from the guy. Again, Larry's his, I think it's his younger brother, I think, if I remember this correctly. But then when Rock is able to, he punches the guy.
Yep.
But what the brother takes away, and this is in the letter that he sends him, is that he says, after Rock punches him, Rock reaches out with his hand and gives him a hand. Even though that if things were reversed, situation was reversed, that bully would have just continued kicking him if he could. And so the brother took a lesson from that. And you have to, after you fight, you have to forgive. But this hand here is important in the story. Again, the artist for this book was, give credit to the artist here, Dan Spiegel.
Yeah.
And it was with stories, again, the Robert Kanigher story. So later on, we get another juxtaposition of the story is when both are kids again, and the brother again falls in a bad situation. He falls into the ice cracks into a creek, and again Rock saves him, reaches out and saves him. And they say, we're not going to tell Mom about this because she's going to worry, so they don't tell Mom. And there's General MacArthur. So we go throughout this story, and Rock's doing his thing, and him and his company. But he gets, in the same letter, the brother says at the conclusion that MacArthur has finally said, I'm going to send you to Zurich to get treatment for this surgery. Now, Switzerland is neutral, so he's sent over there. Rock is given then a mission. Apparently, they have to travel and find a GI who has intelligence, but he's been captured by the Germans. And the orders for Rock are quite simple. Get him, but if you can't, execute him. The reason Rock must try to get him alive, again, he's a fellow GI, is because he has important information about the Japanese campaign. I mean, about MacArthur's plans for Japan. And the Germans, if they get this information, it's going to lead to many, many deaths. So rescue him if you can, but if you can't, you have to take him out.
Right.
So when he gets to where this man is being held by the Germans, the man who's being held is his brother. The Germans have kidnapped him from the hospital in Zurich, taken him across, I think somewhere, I don't know, Germany or somewhere else. And they're torturing him, literally just torturing him to death to get information from him when Rock arrives to rescue him. And that's where we get here. This final pages here with his brother. Now his brother's getting these terrible headaches because of the shrapnel in his head, but he's very weak, and they think they're going to be captured by the Germans. And he says this, Frank, I'd rather you finish me than let them capture me again and force the information from me.
Right on.
And he goes, you're my brother. I'm not going to do that. I can't. So then the brother shoots Rock, but he aims at the gun, which brings us back to the beginning of our story. Right? The Rock falls over, but he's still hanging on. And the brother now reaches out to save him. In the past, it was always reversed, right?
Right.
He goes, you never changed, Frank. You sacrificed your life for me. He goes, you'll do the same. You never give up, Rock. I'm too old to change. He says, I'll make it easy for you. Larry, don't. And Larry leaps over, but Rock catches him. Catches him for the last time. And he says, he's hanging on with his brother.
He ain't heavy. That's my brother.
He goes, I've held on to you long enough, Frank. I'm not dragging you over. This is where I get off.
Yeah.
So long. And he falls to his death. I didn't know, I think at this point, that he had a brother. And in this annual, it's very powerful, I think, very powerful annual. With those flashbacks.
Yeah.
And how there at the end, the brother lets go. It's just very arresting, and I knew this is going to be a good story. I knew it was probably going to be a very strong story because it's written by Robert Kanigher, but not like this. Did not expect this at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just layered with emotion.
I have 2 boxes here in the floor, and I'm getting rid of a lot of war comics and GI combat and stuff. I am 75% sure I have that annual, and if it's in there, I'm not getting rid of that. When I saw the cable cars, I was like, oh my God, I've read this. And I don't know if people know what that means. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. But that's a term that came out of Vietnam.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I
won't get into the whole story, but the gist
wonderful.
is a soldier was not going to leave a man behind. And they're like, drop him, you're going to die, because they were under fire. He's too heavy for you to get out of there. And he was like, he ain't heavy, he's my brother. And that's exactly what I remembered reading that, because I was always confused on what that term meant until I found out the story. I think somebody wrote a song or a book or something. I don't know. Maybe it was 1984, 83. I remember where I was living. But the cable cars, man, when I saw those cable cars, I was like, oh my God, we did it again. You know what I mean? Like, I would have definitely have done that. That is such an obscure comic.
Yeah.
But this is what I try to tell people. I mean, you get it. When you go digging and something catches your eye, you never know what you're going to find. And you're just going to find like some of the best stories are not key books.
No, but also, once you're familiar with the people who are just good at what they do. Yeah. When I picked up that Christmas issue, okay, I looked at it, just the artwork. Okay, that's Kubert. Oh, that's Byrne. Oh my God, that's Paul Chadwick. You already know these are people who are going to deliver something.
Oh yeah, interesting
at the very least, right? And so once you do that, and then with the Sergeant Rock stuff, you read a handful of of Kanigher stories. You're not going to be disappointed in any way.
Right.
And it just goes like that. We get familiar with who are the writers, who are the artists, who are the creators that just will not disappoint you at all. And that's just the case. You mentioned Ennis, you mentioned Moore, you mentioned others we've discussed here, that just do not disappoint at all. And you're in for something good in some way.
Man. Well, I don't want to end on one of my books unless if that's all. I mean, I'll move forward if that's all right with you. But this may have to be the last one.
That'll be good, Tim.
I can do all this day. So, real quick, a little backstory on this is I've said before, back in the day, Jack Kirby comics scared me. Right? I was a little kid. That blocky style of his, the weird colors on some of his stuff, especially DC, and I still have a coverless copy of Our Fighting Forces, where there's demon heads on the front cover, and a guy looks like Thunderbolt Ross there, and I don't know if he's having a dream or what's going. And that was one of the books, along with OMAC #1, that I would have to flip the comic over when I'm like 5 years old, so I can go to sleep. Like, it would be across the room, and I could still feel like they were looking at me. I still have it on this bottom shelf, the coverless copy, and I did find a color copy of this. Right, this is going somewhere, right? So basically, I'm going to show you a little Losers story, but it's not where you expect it to be. So I got introduced to the Losers by Jack Kirby. And the whole idea of this is that there's 4 or 5 guys and a dog who are from different parts, different branches of the military during World War II. A Navy guy, Army guy, Air Force guy. And the main guy that I remember, let me look up the members here. This is one of those books where like these guys ran for over 100 issues. Like these guys have been around. Oh, the advertisements. But anyway, you have Captain Storm, who had a wooden leg that is being covered up by this ad. They didn't do it. But Captain Storm was interesting because he has an eye patch. Anyway, Captain Storm has an eye patch and a leg. There's a Navajo Air Force pilot. There's Gunner and Sarge. And then there's the dog Pooch. It has a white dog I was going to show you. It is not a Howler Mouse video unless there's a technical issue. Let's face it.
That's right.
That blows my mind. It's been sitting here for a little bit. So anyway, I think it's good stuff. And Jack Kirby, a World War II vet, did some stuff in here, right? And this is back in the day when he worked at stuff where here's the Germans shooting down a bunch of villagers and stuff, right? Okay. Jack Kirby, when you read Jack Kirby, you kind of got the idea. I mean, he based Apocalypse and Darkseid on Hitler. You know what I mean? Amongst other people and stuff, right? So he knows what he's talking about. Now, you take Darwin Cook, going back with Alan Burnett and stuff like that. Darwin Cook did The New Frontier, DC The New Frontier, it's been adapted into a straight to DVD cartoon, if you will. And they did a great job getting the Darwin Cook style and everything like that. But Darwin Cook did this thing where he did a deep dive, and he did this, and it affected his work from there on out, where he did a deep dive into the 50s, even how a kitchen table looked, the Art Deco of the time, or whatever you call it, stuff like that. And he did this book about the Silver Age where he took these characters and that's where they were. It was the rise of a lot of these characters. Batman meeting the Martian Manhunter watching television in the Twilight Zone or whatever to learn about culture. Why Batman ended up getting a sidekick like Robin, because he never meant to scare children and stuff. There's building, right? And I love Darwin Cook, and I love what he did with it and what he did with Wonder Woman, making her more of an Amazon, and his style. This is a classic, okay? The New Frontier is a classic. With that said, though, despite all the great superhero stuff and the pilot of Hal Jordan is more of a pilot than a Green Lantern. He builds up all this stuff. This is the closing. This is between the Golden Age, coming out of the Atomic Age, going into the Silver Age with all the heroes like Adam Strange and stuff, right? But at the beginning of it, there's a prologue, so we know who the protagonist is, right? And this prologue is of the losers. And I wanted an entire story of this. You mind if I go solo?
Not at all. Please do.
So anyway, he starts it out very slowly, where we see this island, and this is Dinosaur Island, if you will. If you know comics, you had like, this is an island where there's a bunch of dinosaurs, still on this island. It's just Jurassic Park before Jurassic Park. This is the 50s. And this is the story of the losers, because the losers ended up trapped here on a mission. They didn't know there were dinosaurs here, right? So you see all of these guys, and the protagonist is on the island, right? And there's a series of books about the military fighting the dinosaurs and stuff. So when I saw the losers, I was like, nice. Like I said, this is a prequel to the story. They're on the island. They're all doing their mission. And then all of a sudden, they hear the thunder. They see the dinosaur. The dinosaur sees them. And they're all like, oh, my God. They're shocked. They go into battle, into formation. They're already a unit. They're trying to survive. And sadly, despite all their fighting, they end up going down one by one.
Oh, gee. Okay.
And they kind of think, you kind of get the idea, the cliche would be have the guy with the eye patch and the wood would kind of become the lead. Johnny Cloud, I'll just keep going. Johnny Cloud ends up being the last one to survive. Okay. So they've been through war with these guys. They call themselves the losers, if you get what I'm saying. Sarge is down, says, he didn't make it. Basically, we get down to Johnny Cloud being the last one alive. Okay, the imagery. Darwin Cook is just a master storyteller in this, right? And then the T-Rex is there. The dog is down. And this is the greatest moment. Okay, so we have Johnny Cloud, and he's a Navajo, right? Let me find where it starts here. So he's going to take on the dinosaur that's killed everybody, the one thing that's been getting them, right? And so the last few pages here is we have Johnny Cloud left there, right? And he gets a grenade, and come on, man. There we go. And he's diving into the mouth. That's all he's got is one grenade left, right? And here's what he has to say. In the sky above me is a miracle. When I was born, I was named after a great mounted warrior of the clouds. That's what he's looking at. All these clouds come in, and he's Johnny Cloud. That's a sign, right? A warrior of the clouds. And now here's the grand and silent witness to my death. I decided it's the last thing I want to see. So he's taking in the clouds. He goes, I close my eyes, and he pops the last two grenades.
Wow.
And then he dives into there. And he goes, I take flight. And they've been writing their names on the cloud, the story of the loser, so people know they were there. And we have all these flashback images. Okay. All right. He goes, ask my family. They'll tell you that I was a Navajo. I'm getting verklempt here. Sorry, guy. He goes, ask the Army Air Force. They'll say I was an American. But if you ask my brothers, they'll tell you straight. Johnny Cloud was a loser. Oof. And
wow.
Yeah. Johnny
He wrote
Cloud
those too, right, Tim? He wrote and did everything, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Those pages, that epilogue right there, to introduce the island, which plays a part later on. Yeah, that right there, I read that. I was blown away. And I love this story. It is a classic. I love Darwin Cook. This made me a fan and all that stuff. Yeah. But I was kind of disappointed with the rest of the story. I wanted more of that, so yeah, that got me. Yes, guys, I'm ex-military, but it was like, I got out in 2001. You know what I mean? Nothing big. But yeah, that got me. When I read that, I was like, oh my God, stop everything. You know what I mean? I was like, I had to take a moment. I was by myself, but I was very dramatic there. I was like, whoa, stop everything. And I reread those pages again before I went on with the story. I mean, it was a moment. So
wow. That's wonderful, Tim. I've never read any of the New Frontier books, and I see them every once in a while, individual issues here and there. Yeah. And it's just something eventually I will get to. But I didn't know about that loser story. It's the first time I know about that one.
Yeah, that's issue 1 of the New Frontier. That's just the prologue.
What a way to begin a story. Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but Johnny Cloud sitting there looking at everything. I mean, it was just masterful. Just masterful. I mean, that's just, like I said, so if you notice, a lot of the stories we're talking about, they're just in a few pages. I mean, I never put that together.
They are. They just, except for the Sergeant Rock annual, which is, rather lengthy. But otherwise, you don't need much. That's what the comic medium can do you have the right combination of people or one person sometimes. And you just execute it in a way the way a film can't do or a movie can't do. I'm sorry, a film or a book can't do. Because you focus on those panels and those images and the coloring and everything, and it gets the mood. Everything is there, and those images just stay with you, right? And the emotions stay with you.
Yeah,
they resonate.
Yeah, I think the NAM. I was about to pull out some stuff.
Mm-hmm. I thought about the NAM too. Some stories and they were very affecting too. Yeah.
Yeah, the NAM and like the losers. If you want, I think those are some of the best consistent war stories, if you will. I mean, good thing to get, but you'll never know what you get out of a war story. NAM started out by a man who was there. 1 month of the book was 1 month of our time, and every 12 issues, you were supposed to get new soldiers to follow, see how the war affected them. And then, like I said, with the losers, I just showed you the characters. I haven't. I know there's over 100 issues of the losers. So I've probably read 30 or 40. Yeah, I read like 30 or 40 of their adventures. And this is a handful that I've got left or found over the years. I don't usually give recommendations on war books. It's not my favorite, but I enjoy those books.
Garth Ennis's war stuff is fantastic. I
Yeah.
think that's some of his strongest work are his war stories.
I'm trying
Either
to think if
World
he's got
War
an enemy ace. I think he has an enemy ace
He
story.
does, and I've never
Yeah.
read it. But he has one about the Russian snipers.
Hmm.
He's got one about the Russian female pilots, which I really enjoy, and his short stories about the war, World War One,
Yeah.
World War Two. I mean, he is someone who is his imagination. I mean, he gets the history right,
Right.
but as a storyteller, he's got that fire in him where he can just. I mean, I was debating. I just couldn't decide on which Garth Ennis book to pick. I mean, of the war stuff.
Right.
That's why I didn't pick anything by him because I'm thinking, where do I begin with this guy?
I
Because
tell you what I tell you what I would like to do, not to interrupt you. I'm getting short on time. I
no,
apologize,
you have
Lord.
to go, Tim. I know. Yeah,
But I tell you what I would love to do is a part 2 of this. You got
that'd be
me
great. Absolutely. Could have you
one or
have
two,
here.
one or two. Like I said, I picked these on the fly. You had fantastic choices, and
Same
it's made me. It's focused me. I know a few other books, but I have The Crow here. I have some American Splendor. I want to keep some of these out. I like to. I've been trying to put things up. I want to keep some of these out in thing. But what I'd like to do is in the near future, maybe we finish this up, a part 2.
That'd be great. I would like to do that.
And
Absolutely.
with the war stuff you're talking about, I would love to do a war comics one. I mean, I'm limited. I'm limited with what I can pick from, but I think some of the stuff I have is fantastic. If
That'd be good.
would you be up for that? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. That's when I'll bring out a lot of the Garth Ennis stuff.
great, man.
Yeah.
Gore, I enjoyed this. This was fantastic.
It's always good. It's always
As
enjoyable.
always, yeah,
Absolutely.
as always. I want to end up trying to find that Christmas special now. Is what's going to happen.
Yeah, again, it's Christmas special 1989, number 2. People have find it. I think it's worth it. It's worth it. And the annual, Sergeant Rock annual number 2.
Yep. Fantastic. Oh man, I hope I still have that. I mean, I don't know. I read the story and I thought it was good. That's why I held on to it for all those years. I probably thought it was probably the stepdads. Like I said, and I've just like over the past year stuck it in a box to get rid of it, and that's just not going to happen. Hearing somebody else interpret the story was fantastic. Crisis is still the major crossover that will probably never be topped. Time has been on the side of that crossover.
Yeah, I agree. It's just I just don't understand how they did it.
Yeah,
how they did it. It's an astounding work.
And I know people hate when I do this. I'm sorry, but the quality of comics that have come out in the last 10 years, and you go back and see what they were able to accomplish. George Perez, man, to accomplish that, put that beside of a modern comic and realize he got a little behind, but he still made the important deadlines. Unreal.
That's true.
Shirley Tim, there's a volume in the Crisis hardcover set that basically is a making of the book, and that's great. Yeah, I want to have to break down and get that box set. And then Shirley Tim, I'm glad the cat woke me up. That was a great way to start a Saturday. Awesome.
Glad you could join us, Tim.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, Tim.
Yeah. So make sure you subscribe to Gore's channel. So make sure you subscribe here, hit the bell. As you heard, we're going to follow up on this.
Yeah.
And then hit that bell. Make sure you know that we're here. We're a little sporadic here and stuff. And then I just can't thank you enough. This was fantastic. It's one thing. I mean, we've talked before, but when we actually do something like this, it leads to a good day for me.
Same. It really does. It does. And I'm grateful to you, and grateful everyone to stop by. And
Great.
I mean, we're all here. It's a small circle, really, of those of us here. And I mean, there's quite a few of us, but
yeah,
I think everyone here, and people watch my channel, watch your channel. I mean, we have a certain way of looking at the comics. We take them seriously. It's a serious medium, and these are the funnies, as some people just dismiss them, and the Superman story, it's just a guy who flies, and, all super strengths, and Dead Man story, that sounds gimmicky, sounds dumb. And, it's for kids. Yeah, it's for kids, and, but to be fair, hey, kids have good imaginations, have good stories. So,
well, see, let me check my time here. I agree with you, but I think when you step back, you realize there are kid classics.
No, that's what I'm getting at. Oh, not at
Yeah,
all. No, I'm saying I'm being sarcastic towards those people who dismiss
exactly.
it as that. The
Oh,
thing is, no. I mean, those kids comics are just amazing. Those kid stories are amazing. You
I'm
just
on your
see it.
side. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I wasn't calling you out. I'm on
yeah,
your side. Yeah,
yeah.
I
You're
agree with
seeing it
you.
through a different lens than we do, and you're just
The
not seeing the deeper meaning in these things. So,
where the wild things are, where a lot of
yeah,
people don't realize food is the allegory or symbol for love. If you read the wild things, you'll see he was hungry and angry. The
Mhm.
Little Prince of all
Oh, Little
things, with
Prince
the
is great.
snake and the fox, what they mean.
Yeah,
Where the wild things are. We can go on.
Doctor
There's classics,
Seuss,
and
everything. Yeah, all those things. Yeah.
comic books, like it or not. And this isn't my term. It was just sort of like some people came up with the term at the same time. And I heard Denny O'Neil say it one day, but people who were actually doing comics kind of realized that, at least back in the day, that they were dealing with our modern mythology and there was a responsibility. It's entertainment, but at the
Yeah.
same time, the stuff influences people and
Yeah.
tells stories. So, yeah.
A lot of truth in these books. A lot of truth, human truth.
Yeah.
No,
All right,
thank you
guys.
everyone for stopping by.
All right, guys. I'm the one that has to go, and I'm not ready to get off here, but I have to. So, but see
Bye,
y'all
everybody.
later. Thank y'all.
Bye, Tim.